which again is why political correctness, it doesn't fit in this scene. First of all, when you accurately translate it, the Japanese word for political correctness wasn't even used. Yes, another video on localizers and the pieces of trash they are. The second they stop being so is the second I'll stop doing so. What really disgusts me about them is their lack of respect, appreciation, ethical duty they feel owed to these properties they've been awarded to work on, dismissing the fact that all fans want is to receive the anime that we love in its truest essence. Now, I will say there may be a difference between earlier localizers from the 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s compared to now. Maybe there was a genuine feeling that the American audience will love anime, but let's tone it down because the Japanese writing might be too much for them. For instance, this clip from Tenchi Muyo Ryoki with the English version compared to the Japanese version.
Stop! Stop! You're tickling me! Enough!
And I remember watching this on Toonami, I could see why they wouldn't air the latter. Though that didn't stop me and my brother from going to Chinatown, discovering the VHS Japanese sub version, starting with I think it was the first Broly movie because we were sick of the reruns, and instantly realizing the superiority in the subs compared to the dubs and were nearly converted overnight. So maybe I'll give early localizers the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were aiming for the mark but just missing it, presuming their audience couldn't handle or want such maturity being delivered in Japanese writing. But compare that to localizers now, who not only miss the mark, but intentionally never aim for it, if anything spitting on the mark, and the fans who demand the mark be hit.
Funimation has come under, let's call it, criticism for how they choose to adapt their scripts. So how would you like to respond to that kind of criticism?
To the criticism, like, I have a vagina, deal with it. I'm sorry you're not getting laid, it's not about you, move on. If I'm making misogynists and Nazis angry, then I'm doing all right.
I know I use that clip a lot, but never forget what these people think of you for daring to in Japanese media in its truest form. Localizers now are arrogant. They believe somehow these properties are theirs and was somehow created by them, thinking they have free reign to do whatever they feel with them. I truly believe localizing at this point is just a way to channel one's narcissism. Dumb down dialogue just to hear a character speak the way they do because personal ego comes first.
Cope see them all, viewers.
Now, to some, this may sound great, like, oh, I talk like that too, how cool, having the type of dialogue that pleases a 10-year-old with no foresight of how badly this will quickly date the dub because what's cool today is cringe tomorrow. Oh, and speaking of cringe, same anime, by the way, showing subs, which I mostly prefer, aren't safe either, doubling down on cringe by using the word cringe in the subs. To me, this type of dialogue sounds like the principal trying to hang with the cool kids in the school.
I'm with it. I'm hip.
I've said a million times, it's world breaking. The reason why I watch anime is not to hear Western slang, modern or past, but to hear the Japanese intended dialogue. Just as I did with a film I watched recently called Trainspotting that takes place in Scotland. I want to hear how Scottish people talk, immersed in their culture. And I truly believe another role of the localizer is to erase the Japanese culture from its own media, games as seen right here, anime, manga, whatever, as stated from a localizer himself. A vocal minority wants games to ooze Japanese when the setting has absolutely nothing to do with Japan. In the Japan theme work, I understand that argument, but most of my games, your games, okay, aren't depicting Japan. Prioritizing Japanese-ness over authenticity to the source is fetishization.
You fucking people.
Video game localizations are most successful when they make the original work's themes feel universal. The creators generally don't want their works to be fetishized or othered for being foreign. They want them to be appreciated for their intrinsic value regardless of language. And even when it comes to religion purposes, people find it necessary to change Japanese dialogue. Richard Honeywood says working on the localization of Xenogears was a nightmare. You had to remember that the content was quite formidable. It's not only packed with references to Jungian and Freudian psychology, but it's also a game about killing God. At the time, I was a Jehovah's Witness, so that part of the subject matter was already kinda hitting my conscience. But some US staff were also scared about what the response would be. For instance, they wanted us to remove the word church with a capital because it might appear to be the Catholic Church. So I was even having to go to the development team before the Japanese version launched, and I was telling them, please tone down some of this stuff. A stated goal from Alpha Translations, who worked on Dragon Quest Phoenix Wright, you'd never know it started in Japanese. I feel like I'll have to learn Japanese just to enjoy Japanese media. With subs being corrupted as well, I feel like I can't trust what I'm reading. Many instances where I think this line doesn't seem to fit here, or this scene doesn't make sense with what they're saying, because localizers with their corruption have no care whether what they choose to inject changes the framing of the story and the characters and lacks congruence or harmony in some way, which leads to this episode of Oshinoko for an example. There's a scene where a TV executive or director has gotten a cosplayer to do an interview for their show, and in present day, doing TV appearances isn't seen as fashionable or typical. If anything, is something of the past. So many cosplayers avoided and rejected this offer. And since the show that the cosplayer agreed to do isn't as popular, there should have been the utmost gratitude on the director's part. But instead, his goal was to ask uncomfortable, inappropriate, and over-personal questions, all for the sake to boost ratings, being extremely rude in doing so. Almost like your general ambush interview full of got you questions, which later causes her to go on a digital rant posting her disdain for TV, how they're out of touch and judgmental towards cosplayers, basically viewing them the same as prostitutes, making last-minute demands of them, assuming what they do is trivial and low class. And this rant caused many online to rally behind her in support, which caused extreme backlash against the TV network, having the assistant director apologize for the rudeness of their main director and pleading for her to take her post down, which she refused. Then when the network has a meeting planning to take down the episode, the director takes no accountability, putting the blame on her for being just a crazy chick looking to stir up outrage and leaking information prior to the official release of the interview. And when the assistant director decides to speak up to put him in check, the subtitles read as, "Doing things this way just isn't acceptable anymore. In this day and age, political correctness is everything. We have to be more respectful." And when I first read that, my immediate reaction was, political correctness? That term doesn't make sense here. It doesn't fit in this scenario. First of all, when you accurately translate it, the Japanese word for political correctness wasn't even used. So this was an overt intentional decision from a localizer to inject this despite it not being said in the original source. The proper translation was compliance, and I was glad other people called this out as well. I watch on Anyone Asia membership format, and I can tell you no word as politics is used here, with their translation saying, nowadays it's about following the rules. Which makes a whole lot more sense for this scene, which I'll explain very soon. But what was really concerning was people excusing this, not for the sake of siding with localizers necessarily, but out of ignorance of not knowing what political correctness actually means. Honestly, I think the term fits just fine and makes sense in this context. Homie, what do you think political correctness means? In all fairness, political correctness is just a shorter form of what he says. Respect and compliance is political correctness in form. And it made me think, oh, people don't know what political correctness is. It's so ingrained in our culture and has been hammered, pumped nonstop into people's brains that people don't know how to point it out. It's like a fish in water not knowing it's in water. Political correctness has a distinct meaning. It's sacrificing truth for the sake of not being offensive. For instance, I remember hearing doctors not being allowed to use the word fat to describe their obese patients because patients complained about that being too offensive.
I know this is a controversial thing to say now in today's America, but being fat is a bad thing. Fat activist Ted Kyle, founder of Conscious Health, says the media and public needs to stop catastrophizing obesity. People like Adele face shame campaigns for losing weight. This is madness. There's a reason the first thing your doctor does is make you step on a scale. It used to be. There's a card now that you can give your doctor and it says, please don't weigh me unless it's really medically necessary. It's always necessary. It's like asking your dentist not to look at your teeth.
Even in other cases where the mere mention of the word weight isn't allowed.
Weight Watchers had to literally take the words weight and watchers I'm not kidding. Out of their name, it's now WW, because merely the idea of watching your weight is now bullying. What's next? Banning scales?
Another example is politicians referring to homeless people as unhoused people because homeless was deemed too offensive as well. Also saying men can't give birth because that's too offensive to a certain demographic, and even the word retard was considered evil to use.
I work with retards.
Isn't that a little politically incorrect?
Even though it's an actual medical term to refer to mentally handicapped people, but people's willingness to be offended must come first. And when someone complained about this scene keeping woke terms and agendas out of anime, someone else responded with, political correctness is not a woke term.
Really?
Political correctness was invented in the Soviet Union for one reason and one reason only, to say to people, what you're saying is factually correct, but it's politically incorrect. And that meant it was inconvenient to the party line of the day. It was a way of enforcing an ideology on everybody else. My grandfather, late Soviet Union, said the wrong thing about the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Boom, lost his job, his wife fired from her job. Again, is that so unfamiliar to the world that we increasingly live in now?
Which again made me say people really don't know what political correctness means. And I've said before, woke is a mutation of political correctness. Without political correctness, we wouldn't have woke. It's the extreme outcome of it, which again is why political correctness, it doesn't fit in this scene. This scene is more about showing respect to your guest, not by lying or sacrificing the truth, but by not crossing a certain line, by not prying too much into one's personal life, asking if you ever had sex with your photographers while in your cosplay outfit. That's not political correctness. That's just weird, inappropriate, and rude. There's a difference. This scene was more about how the TV exec should have been more professional, using proper protocols, showing a certain level of decorum, proper TV etiquette, massaging the ego of your guests to make them feel more welcome, playing the game. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. It reminds me of that scene in Wolf of Wall Street where Leo's character is meeting with a Swiss banker. And before engaging in business proceedings, it's considered proper Swiss etiquette to engage in small talk first.
You'll understand when you're in the fucking
Okay.
You need a bigger couch for
Yeah,
guests.
yeah. I don't understand. I'm sorry.
I'm curious about your bank secrecy laws here.
Which Leo offends him by not wanting to and just getting straight to business.
Yes. Excusez-moi, Jordan. Swiss custom requires 10 minutes of blah, blah, blah.
Chit-chat.
Yeah, chit-chat, thank you, before business can be discussed. Yeah. Of course. Let's get down to it.
Again, it's about playing the game, following the rules, being compliant as the actual translation said. Now, a good example of when political correctness would have made sense to use is, let's say the cosplayer was really fat and overweight, and the director asked her, does being really fat and overweight limit the characters you can cosplay as? And if she responded with, I'm for body positivity and prefer the term plus sized, then that would be a good example of when the line from the assistant director, political correctness, makes sense.
Duh.
And again, it's frustrating when fans themselves encourage the rewriting of one's work through localization. These past few weeks, one character who has been used for the politically correct types is Kiara from JJK, with Crunchyroll referring to him as a she or they, and other platforms properly referring to him as he or he, such as Amazon. And I won't get into that debate again, but this is a perfect example of political correctness at play, a platform willing to lie to its audience all for the sake of not offending a certain demographic of its viewers. Which, this is no surprise, Crunchyroll is in the lead when it comes to having the most corrupt localization, and again, it's disrespectful when quote-unquote fans will support this rewriting, all to serve their own ego and feel validated in doing so. This user making the excuse of the character Hakari, hope I'm pronouncing that right, who seems romantically involved with Kiara, saying Hakari said he wouldn't date a guy, so Kiara is a female, which is just absurd in every way. It's almost shocking that anyone would even try to use that logic. There are plenty of men out there who will engage in same-sex acts, then try to convince themselves they're not gay.
I am not gay. I have relationships with women and sex with men.
And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
this user needing to psych themselves out when watching JJK. Hi, I do understand the culture about this subject, and I'll explain to you in simple terms why it's not said clearly that if a character is trans, the author is not aware about trans identity being a thing, and Otokonoko culture is the closest thing. That's it. It's that effing simple. Some might, and most don't give a fuck. No, it's not a power play, it's just people wanting to feel represented instead of having their existence ignored in media they enjoy. Which goes to my point of the immature fan in previous videos. People having an unhealthy attachment to these characters and only watch them for one reason, to feel validated, and that's it, even at the cost of dismissing and disrespecting the culture these stories come from, with this user summing it up well. Hi, I, an obvious Westerner, understand the Japanese culture. The author, who is Japanese, is just not aware of their own culture. And it's gotten so bad that even Japanese fans are realizing the obsessiveness of the identity-obsessed fan. That's it. The reason a lot of Japanese people are getting super pissed off at foreigners is because they try to tie everything to transgender issues. If you want to see that many works featuring transgender characters so badly, then just go make them yourselves, damn it. Because, like the corrupt Localizer, these quote-unquote fans feel more entitled to the author's work than the actual author, him or herself, with the memes like this saying, Localizers when they're required to translate itadakimasu or anything else correctly, almost like it would put them in absolute agony for them to do so. But that's all I have for this video. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. It's not even just being accurate with the translations, it's keeping the sentiment the same as well. Like with this rerun dub versus sub scene, the dub saying, demons use words to trick humans. In the sub version, for them, words are a means of deceiving humans. Now to me, when I read this, the sub has a certain poetic feel to it. It's sophisticated, mature, encourages thinking on the viewer's part, while the dub seems kind of kiddish and fanalized, something you expect to hear out of a toddler's picture book. It's just lacking in so many ways, but I'll leave it at that. Also, if you haven't checked out my music, links in the description. If you love those Samurai Champloo, lo-fi mellow boom bap vibes, then my music is definitely for you. And if you want to support me and the content I create, consider joining my channel and becoming a member. It's much appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Free think. Peace.